And now, as I mentioned, as I hinted towards this, Craven and Carter sat down with Rice head coach Mike Bloomgren. So here's our interview. Wait. Oh, Mallory's. Oh, never mind. Just kidding. What are we?
I thought we were going to do games first because we're going to use our game to go into.
Okay. Well, let's. Then I'll pass the ball to you instead.
You just don't want to pass the ball to me. You just don't want me to get on this mic and talk. Do
Kobe
you?
Bryant over here.
Yeah, no kidding. Seriously.
All right, fine. So we'll pass the ball to Mallory. We'll do the top 5 games if you're familiar with how we've broken down the schedules in the past. It's a little bit of the same, a little bit different, but the same will remain with Mallory taking over.
Let's go. I have the power now. I told Craven earlier he had the power, but now I have the power. All right, starting off strong, guys. Texas A&M, number 20 in the national rankings, taking on hosting number 7 Notre Dame this Saturday, August 31st at 6:30 p.m., and that is the prime time spot, I'd say, on ABC. Texas A&M coming into this game as 3-point favorites. The over-under set at 46.5. And Craven, I believe you're going to be at this game in College Station, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am. That's a projected 24-21 for Texas A&M, which points-wise feels about right. When we were in Vegas for the Big 12 Media Day, this line was at 0. Not that I went by a casino and checked, but this line was
We absolutely did not.
At that point. And so, I think the confidence level in A&M has grown just with how, they just kind of been competent behind the scenes, right? Like not a lot of drama. I feel like they have good vibes going against them. Kyle Field's always a hard place to play in. But this feels more like about Notre Dame and maybe their offensive line. They're going to start 2 freshmen and 3 sophomores, not a lot of starts up there. Mm-hmm. And A&M's best defensive unit is the defensive line. So for me, this comes down to can Notre Dame block the Aggies and what Texas A&M's defense is able to do, against a quarterback and Riley Leonard that, the staff at A&M is, very familiar with as well.
Yeah, we got a little bit of the 12th man versus Rudy here, Texas A&M versus Notre Dame, 2 Hall of Fame walk-on type programs. But I agree, the Riley Leonard versus Mike Elko matchup is what I'm really focusing in on because Riley Leonard, while he is a very athletic quarterback, a very dynamic quarterback, Mike Elko knows his deficiencies from coaching him at Duke. Now, Mike Elko in the press conference played a little bit coy and said, I think Riley actually has the advantage over us because he's so intimately familiar with our defense. So we'll see. Remains to be seen what happens there. The matchup I'm focusing on, I love what Craven said about the Notre Dame offensive line versus the Texas A&M defensive line, but I'm looking at Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison and safety Xavier Watts. They are both preseason All-American picks. Xavier Watts was the Bronco Nagurski Award winner. And this is Connor Wigman's first game back in almost a year.
Yeah. This is going to be, that's the linchpin kind of A&M season, it feels like, right? Because every year their season kind of fell off when he got hurt and they had to put somebody else in, whether that was Max Jackson or, of course, eventually Henderson last year. It always stemmed from their number one guy wasn't available. And so you look at Dane Brugler on The Athletic, who had his recent draft board come out. Scouts still like Connor Wegman, right? There's a reason why we here at DCTF still love Connor Wegman. The ceiling is there. The tools are there. From what he's shown in the games that he has played, everything's still there. So, yes, that's going to be number one for A&M this year. But I'm very curious about how A&M – I do love that part about Mike Elko. I was like, I don't know. It might be better for Riley Leonard. Is it easier to scout one guy or 11? I don't know, Good job, Coach, on trying to get that one around. But I'll say this. Notre Dame has a backfield that is two true sophomores. I believe Jadavion Price from Lufkin last year kind of broke onto the scene. But the other guy, I forget, Love, I'm forgetting his name, Jeremiah Love. That's a lot of pressure on 2 true sophomores, right? Mm-hmm. Price had a good year last year, but that's going to be a lot of pressure on to go against that A&M defensive line, especially, Carter. A little hint, if you haven't checked out Carter's piece on Shamar Turner. That's going to be a very big challenge for this Notre Dame team. I'm very curious because A&M has shifted to be the favorite a little bit, which is a little bit of an interesting development.
Craven, I want to get your thoughts on this because I'm on record saying I was going to put my parents' mortgage on A&M, but I thought they were going to be underdogs and have the plus money line. Now that A&M's favored, what are your thoughts here?
Well, that's why you go to Vegas in July and get that line early when you like it. You don't have to wait until the week of to bet it, but. I think it just has to do with vibes. Like week 1 is a weird betting week. Like if you feel strongly about this one way or the other, go at it because these numbers are not in tune with what's happening this year. A lot of it's built in on last season. A lot is built in on preseason camp report vibes. And if you're at A&M, it does seem like it's going in the right direction. There's not any outside noise. Nobody's gotten in trouble. Nobody's gotten kicked off the team. Everybody's, kind of kumbaya honeymoon period stuff. And that defense is going to be nasty. Notre Dame doesn't have historically very good wide receivers. Jaden Greathouse, Westlake Star's still there. I know they like him. But they're not going to scare the A&M secondary, and it feels like that's how you're going to beat A&M. They brought in a lot of new faces. Mike Elko is a secondary expert, but if there's a weakness in the defense, it's going to be the back four, not the front seven. And so you're going to have to block A&M, and then you're going to have to take advantage of the secondary. I just don't know if Notre Dame can do either of those things. And so then it comes down to the offense, and can Connor Wegman and this passing offense figure it out? To me, it's still the right tackle position. Amars Reed Adams has played a little bit of right tackle in camp. The initial depth chart came out, and it has Demetrius Crownover and Ruben Fathery still out there at right tackle. So that's a spot to watch late Saturday night, just to kind of see what that offensive line looks like. Because remember, last time Texas A&M kept a quarterback healthy for a full season, they went 9-1 and were almost in the college football playoffs during the 2020 season. So it's been a while since they've been able to protect a quarterback. If Colin Klein's system and some new faces come in and can do that, A&M wins this game, guys.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we start talking about them as a potential college football playoff contender in the SEC. So there's a lot riding on it for both of these programs, because Notre Dame is also a team with high expectations, a top 10 ranking, that if they lose the opener to the Aggies, they're back to the drawing board as well.
One issue correction, Jadarian Price from Denison. I remember Keegan Young is the running back from Lufkin, also on their roster. But by the way, one last note before we move on from this on Mallory. Credit to Robert Behrens on Twitter at Good Bull Hunting. He brought up the fact that the most expensive ticket for UNLV Houston is less than the cheapest ticket for A&M Notre Dame. Right now, the most expensive ticket, at least as of the 23rd, was $227 for UNLV at Houston. And the cheapest ticket, I believe this is on SeatGeek, $241 for A&M, Notre Dame at A&M.
The free market, baby. Exactly. Or the ticket scalpers market,
What I'm trying to say is, if you have something free to do, make your way to Houston. It might be more affordable.
Go watch that go-go.
Next?
Yes,
Okay.
you're next.
All right, let's move on to our second game of the week. TCU playing, traveling out west to play at Stanford Friday, August 30th at, guys, 9:30 p.m. our time. That's a late kick.
That's sadistic.
That's a late kick. You can watch it on ESPN. TCU coming in as 9-point favorites. The over-under set at 59.5. Craven, I want to ask you this. Last year we kind of saw a breakout star in I'm going to butcher his last name, Io Manor. Did I say that correctly?
That was correct.
Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, we kind of saw a little bit of a breakout from him. Are the eyes going to go to this TCU secondary and what they can do and stop this wide receiver?
Yeah, that's going to be the key. They bring in Andy Avalos to be their defensive coordinator at TCU this year. And one of the main reasons that he replaced Joe Gillespie is to make more plays. And so it's going to be on the secondary, obviously, to come up with some interceptions, some pass breakups. But that's also on this front four, add in the linebackers as well, to get pressure on a quarterback and not leave that secondary so much to dry. It felt last year that TCU secondary had to cover for 5 seconds. And you're just not going to do that very well consistently against college football wide receivers, especially good ones. The guy you're talking about at Stanford lit up Travis Hunter in Colorado last year. He is a really good player.
294 yards.
The secondary is probably the biggest question mark for the Horned Frogs defense going into it. So this is going to have to be one of those games where the Horned Frogs get a lot of pressure on a quarterback, maybe help their secondary cover this guy.
Well, and I think the starting quarterback, Avery Helm, is hurt. Am I right, Craven? He's probably going to miss this game.
Yes.
So that is really not what you want to hear if you're TCU. I think that's right on the defensive side. That's the biggest matchup is Alec Ayamanor versus the TCU secondary, now depleted. But let me go to the other side of the ball. I need this Kendall Briles offense to flex in this first game against a Stanford defense that gave up 37 points per game last year. This is where we get the good vibes going. If they come out with a performance that SMU had last week on offense, people are going to start drawing some narratives.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Stanford and Troy Taylor is they hired him for the long haul, right? He was a Portland State head coach. Of course, him and G.J. Kinney had that great battle in the FCS quarterfinals, I think. Stanford hired him as a slow build. They were 3-9 last year. They had that, of course, that crazy breakout game against Colorado, but as we figured out, Colorado wasn't that great. So this is a game versus a team that TCU, yes, theoretically, comfortably should be able to, as you said, flex a little bit. We should be able to see a lot of why Josh Hoover has been the guy, right, for more or less a year now, or not a year, but 6 months roughly of him being christened as the guy. And yeah, I don't want to see these stop and starts. I don't want to see these red zone struggles from the TCU offense. I need to be able to see them put their foot down and say, okay, cool. Like, this is a Stanford team that's rebuilding, maybe a 4 to 5 win team this year, maybe 6 win, I don't know. But we need to see the TCU that should be theoretically in year 3 under Sonny Dykes be competing for a conference championship, in my opinion.
Has there been a program that's been more nuked by the NIL and transfer portal than Stanford? I pose this question.
And realignment as well.
True.
Yeah, they got to make some cross-country trips this year, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, so TCU offensive line should be dominant. I think they need to be dominant because the Stanford defense, as you mentioned, is not good. We got to see it, though. We got to see it, in my opinion. So, all right, Mallory.
Cam Cook.
Oh, go ahead, Carter. Craven.
I was going to say Cam Cook should have a big game for TCU. Like, they should run the football, keep the football out of Stanford's hands, just pound on these guys. They have more depth. And remember what that Colorado loss did to TCU in week 1 last year. Like, this is a program with Sonny Dykes that has been very hot and cold. Like, when they had all the momentum in the world in 2022, they just kept rolling with that. When it kind of fell apart in 2023, they kind of kept rolling with that. So a strong start feels important for TCU. Josh Hoover needs to have a big game. I think Cam Cook's the name to watch on the offensive side of the ball because the Horned Frogs need to have, an 8-9 win season to be in a Big 12 contention, and you can't do that unless you start well.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to our third game of the week. Houston hosting UNLV this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on FS1. Houston only coming in as 1-point favorites. The over/under set at 54.5. That point spread, Craven, is a little concerning. UNLV is not a bad team, but it seems like to me that Houston should be able to take care of them pretty handedly, or maybe that is an outlook to how this Houston team is going to be this year.
I think it's fair to say that Houston was more talented last year than they are this year.
Correct.
Yep.
And UNLV plays a interesting kind of go-go offense. Brendan Marion's still the offensive coordinator out there. He almost got a few head coaching jobs over the offseason. A really innovative guy. They're athletic. They're going to run the ball out of different stuff. I don't know anything about the Cougars. I was there last week, talked to Willie Fritz multiple times. Like, I still just don't know what that roster is going to look like. You would imagine they can run the ball. Parker Jenkins back. Donovan Smith as a quarterback who can bully some people with the run game. And Fritz, kind of his whole history has kind of had the option run game kind of happen, kind of like what Georgia Tech did to Florida State last week. But I don't know if they can lean on people like that yet. They don't have the depth along the offensive line to do it. Houston is one of those teams that I just think we need to put in an oven and we'll just check back in on in 2025 because it's going to be an up and down season for the Cougars. Maybe more down than up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll say this. Houston's big 3 on offense, you can look at Smith, Jenkins, and probably Manjack now.
Hell yeah.
They match up in terms of like against UNLV well, in terms of like they'll be the best players on their field when they're on the field. The problem kind of comes with everything else. So obviously the defense kind of took a hit in the offseason as well with some late transfers. I'll say this. One thing that plays in UNLV or in Houston's favor is UNLV also switching quarterbacks, right? Their guy left, their guy transferred. This guy that they have coming in, Matthew Sluka, was at Holy Cross last year. So, productive quarterback. He was a first-team All-American FCS last year. But still, that's still going to play against a Big 12 team is not nothing. Yeah. So, maybe this is the perfect on-ramp to kind of see what this defense is made of a little bit.
Now, that good news for the quarterback is he's thrown to wide receiver Ricky White III, who is the leading returning wide receiver in college football with 1,400 yards last year. That matchup with Latrell McCutcheon at cornerback, his debut, it's going to be a really fun matchup because Willie Fritz said that Latrell McCutcheon, and Willie Fritz is a secondary coach, by the way, by trade.
Yep.
He said Latrell McCutcheon has NFL potential.
Yeah, Craven and I got to talk to him at a Big 12 Media Day, and he had a really good interview with him. So that was kind of fun to talk to him as well.
One other Texas tie to UNLV. Speaking of Brendan Marion, Casey Kane. Wide receiver.
Dude, they
should be
have
their,
so
should be their
many.
ex, I believe, at UNLV.
Jalen Catalon too.
Jesus,
on that
he's
team.
there too. Oh my God.
Yeah, they lead the league in like, oh my God, that guy's there.
Yeah. Well, them in Nevada, honestly.
Yeah,
It was
Nevada
like
had a lot too.
Nevada too.
It was
Oh
like
my
you're just looking at the depth
gosh.
chart, like he's there, and then you realize, oh, Brendan Marion, and of course Jeff Choate at Nevada.
Dude,
now.
that Nevada game, I saw Savion Red take a direct snap
Savion
and slip,
Red,
and I was
yeah.
like, I've seen that red cat before.
You had flashbacks to the Red River last year. You're like, not again. Craven, anything last on this game before we move on?
No, I mean, I'm going to check in on it because it's my job, but I don't think it's going to be all that fun.
That's a good way to put that.
I think that's kind of like how Houston's going to be this year, and I think the fan base knows it. I think the administration knows it. I mean, the coaching staff's not going to say it out loud because like it's their job not to. But I think this is one of those years where you're building towards 2025. You're figuring out who's going to be part of that mission and who's not, where you're good, where you're not. And playing a solid G5 team to start it off is going to reveal a little bit about that roster. So there will be something to take from it, but I do feel like it's going to be one of those games that maybe isn't the prettiest to watch.
Yeah, the 2024 Houston season, is going to be like that Office episode where they go to Michael and Jan's dinner party and they haven't even put the pot roast on at 9 p.m.
That's such an awkward episode.
And they'll be like, it's not. They don't even start eating till midnight. Like, just check back. It's 12 hours.
All right, Valor, what's next?
All right, up next on our list, we got two left. North Texas is playing at South Alabama this Saturday at 4 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. South Alabama coming in as 5-point favorites. The over/under set at 64.5. Craven, this feels like an important game for North Texas playing out of conference, opening up the season here. We get to see Chandler Morris's debut. There's so many Morrises and stuff. I'm trying to get it in Chandler's too. Get to see Chandler Morris's debut at quarterback. What are you expecting to see out of the Mean Green this weekend?
It's a big game. Also for me, I picked North Texas to win 7 games in the magazine somehow. Thought I had done 6-6. Somehow ended up at 7-5. So they're going to need to win a football game like this. I think the offense is going to be interesting to watch. You know, the running back position probably not as good as it was last year. So this is going to look more like what we expect an Eric Morris team to look like. Like Chandler Morris is going to have a lot on his plate. He's going to throw the ball 40 times a game. I think this is where we're headed with North Texas' offense. But it's the defense. To me, it's going to be the defense, especially the front 6, front 7. If they can stop the run, what the safeties look like. They lost Hasheem Young, the transfer in from Ole Miss that they knew from their time at Iowa State with Capone there at defensive coordinator back in the day. And so they lost their leverage player that they thought was going to help them kind of be good against the run from the safety spot. Because if you talk to the coaches, they blame a lot of last year just being too small. Like if you're going to run that 3-3-5 defense, you need a force safety on the outside that weighs more than 180 pounds. Like that's who the tight end is blocking. And that's just what teams did last year against North Texas. They put a tight end on one side, and they just pounded people. And if they can kind of counteract that, Jake Shipley's in, just some bigger bodies in there, they're going to score enough points to where this defense doesn't need to be the 85 Bears. They just need to not be 133rd in the nation. And we'll learn a lot of how much they've improved on the finer points of things, like just tackling, just like that kind of little stuff. We'll find that out pretty quickly because South Alabama is one of those teams that's going to put stress on your defense, is going to do some interesting stuff to get in space and make you make those type of tackles.
Yeah. First, a little bit of another Texas tie. South Alabama head coach Major Applewhite. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. So that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, under Kane Womack, South Alabama kind of grew into a reliable Sun Belt team. If Applewhite, he has a good platter to work with and kind of take it forward. We'll see, because as Mallory remembers, like, last year, the game against Cal was like, oh, this is going to be a rough season when you kind of saw that defense.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, obviously the defense is going to be the hinge point as far as, like, can they improve at all? But I'm also interested to see this backfield. Like, Eric Morris, as we know, he'll throw the ball. Chandler Morris will throw the ball a lot. Eric Morris loves to call those plays. But they had a reliable running game last year, and they just don't. I like Akaika Ragsdale, but, like, can he be the guy that Ayoadeji was, right? Can he be the guy that a lot of those guys were, that honestly, UNT's relied on for, going back through the Seth Luttrell era. So we'll see. I'm not concerned about the passing game. Offense, I think overall will be well, but I'm curious to see, do they have a run game? And then as we mentioned, defense. Can they get any stops?
You know what they need to do is stick running back coach Patrick Cobbs back there because that dude could still play.
He can definitely put up 1,000 stops.
So South Alabama is an interesting case here. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but this feels for North Texas like the most can't-lose game of all the games we've talked about. Like, if they go out there and their defense gets waxed by a South Alabama team that, by the way, beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State last year, 33-7 at the beginning of the season.
That's true.
Like, if they put up one of those performances, I think it's starting to get anxiety time in North Texas, just for like, here we go again. Here comes another long season.
Yeah.
My answer for that would be TCU.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure.
Like, they can't lose to Stanford. Like, if they lose to Stanford, the volume on what Sonny Dykes is as a coach there just turns it gets very, very loud very quickly. So, but I do think North Texas is a team that needs to win this game, or at least play in a way that gives you thought that, like, it's not going to look the same as last year, right? If they lose this game, 24-21, 31-29 or something, like, this is a good South Alabama team they're playing against, and you can still get to 6 or 7 wins. But that defense just has to look better, because if they give up 45 points to South Alabama, it's just, oh, here we go again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, South Alabama, though, is projected to win by 5 in this game, and they're picked 5th in the Sun Belt West. So that is not a good sign.
I was about to say, I mean, again, Kane Womack had that program in a really good spot, and Applewhite was part of that staff. So if the theory is that they don't drop off, or if they do, it's very minuscule, yeah, they're facing a really damn good team. But again, we'll see. We never know with these new head coaches until they actually take a snap. So,
all right, and finally, our last spotlight game of the week. Sam Houston playing at Rice this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. Rice coming in as 10-point favorites. The over-under set at 49.5. Guys, I'm so excited to see E.J. Warner's debut at Rice.
Let's go.
I'm so excited. Craven, I am shocked that you're not going to be at this game. How dare you choose Texas A&M over Notre Dame? This, to me, this game is like the Republic of football,
This
right?
is game of the weekend other than
game of the
A&M.
week. Correct. Craven, how dare you, first of all?
Trying to become less of a hipster as we move on in this deal, but I agree with you. Like, I think it's going to be a really fun game. I'd like to be there. These are the type of games that are in my wheelhouse. Obviously, Sam Houston was so bad in one possession games, and Rice plays so many of them that you feel like we're going to find that out soon, right? Like, this game's probably not going to be a blowout. I'd imagine it's close into the second half, and we'll see how Sam Houston can deal in the trenches, because if we know something about Rice, is they're going to pound people. Bloomgren is a former offensive line coach that likes being physical. Dean Connors is a really good offensive player. So I think that they're going to run the football a lot. My biggest question for Rice is who replaces Luke McCaffrey as kind of the number one bailout receiver, because there was a lot of times last year where the Owls needed a play and they just kind of, hey, where's Luke at? Just throw the football up, and he went and bailed them out of a lot of situations. They're going to have that this year, so that's going to have to be somebody else. And then on the flip side of the ball, Sam Houston still hasn't announced a quarterback. I think they've decided on one behind the scenes, but they're not going to, announce it until the game. And so who emerges there? What does that offense look like? Is some healthy wide receivers and Zach Herbesek back? Does that help the offense? Because their margin of error was so small last year because that offense was so bad, especially early on in the year. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of these programs are going into the year in week one here. That's what's fun about week one, is you really have no idea. You think about this stuff all season, but with the transfer portal and the amount of turnover that happens in college football, you just have no idea what's going to happen in week one. And that's what we saw in week 0.
Now, Mallory, I know you're pumped up for E.J. Warner's debut, but he's going to have to go against defensive coordinator Skylar Cassidy, the youngest DC in the FBS, who, getting to Mike Bloomgren's interview coming up here, he spoke very highly of Skylar Cassidy. I think the Sam Houston defense will be very good on the edges, but what concerns me, like Craven's alluding to, is the Rice offensive line against Sam Houston's interior defensive line, because one of their projected starters in our magazine already transferred out, and they didn't have a lot of bodies there already.
Yeah, I'm curious about the wide receiver, as we talked about with, of course, replacing Luke McCaffrey. If Bloomgren wants to look at my NCAA 25 film, it's going to be Landon Ransom Goals.
Yeah, and I think they think it's going to be too.
It might actually be. I mean, just let me run the plays if you want. Also, if you want E.J. Warner to throw like 20 picks, let me run the offense. But regardless, yes, I'm very fascinated to see Sam Houston started off so poorly in terms of injuries, the schedule. This is a lot more of their speed in terms of level of competition. Obviously, Rice is further down the line in terms of development, but They're lining up guys who aren't that much bigger than them, right? They're still transitioning, of course, but they're healthier. If they do have a quarterback, which I would probably bet on, this is not me reporting. I would just bet on Jace Bauer being the guy, reliable FBS quarterback with starting experience. I would just bet on that personally. If he is the guy, then Sam Houston's healthy for the first time. That they weren't last year. They were playing teams that they probably shouldn't have been playing against, trying to scramble together to get an FBS schedule. So, as Craven mentioned, week 1 is so fascinating because I think we're going to make, and naturally as media members we do this, but I think this game's going to say a lot about both teams, because if Rice comes out and smokes Sam Houston, it's like, oh, it's happening here. If it's a great game, I think we take positives away from both teams. If Sam Houston comes out and smokes Rice, we're like, where's that? Where'd this come from? So I think there's something to take away from literally in any scenario from both teams, because I do think these are teams that are maybe better than the national perception is of them. Yeah. But we got to see it come out. We got to see it play out as well.
Yeah, I know Rice is not overlooking Sam Houston, like Mike Bloomgren is not, but I feel like the nation as a whole is way overlooking Sam Houston now. And Rice, the fan base, it feels like, if not now, then when? Even with the loss of JT Daniels and Luke McCaffrey, they really feel like this is the best team Bloomgren's had. I think it's going to be a close game, Craven. What about you?
Yeah, I'd probably lean Sam Houston, take the points just because of the way both of these teams play. I don't think Rice is going to race out to 49 points and kind of leave Sam Houston in the lurch. And so I think they keep it single digits. We'll see what happens in the fourth quarter. But I'm fascinated with what Sam Houston's offense looks like, what quarterback they go with, and just kind of what those wide receivers look like.
All right, Mallory, we have the lightning round coming up. Let's introduce this a little bit. As you guys remember, last year we used to go through every single FBS program or game in the state. This year we're not going to do that. We're going to go in depth on the 5, like you heard earlier, and then Mallory's going to take it from here, and we're going to go rapid fire for the rest of them. Mallory?
First, I want to show off your graphic that you made that has all the games up on here of the week, all 12, I would say. So we'll go through these very quick, but nice graphic. I really, really like this. I believe it's on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So if you forget, it will be on our social media. So let's get right into it. First game of lightning round at number 4, Texas, hosting Colorado State this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN. Texas coming in as 32.5-point favorites. Over-under is 60.5. Probably not much to watch on this game. Craven, give me a quick sentence on what your expectation is for the Texas Longhorns.
Take the over. Colorado State has a pretty solid passing game, a really good wide receiver, so I think there's going to be points here. I think I'm most curious in seeing Arch Manning whenever he comes in, if that's in the first half for a little bit or in the second half, and then just what that Texas secondary looks like and how it shakes out at the opposite corner of Malik Muhammad.
Up next, we've got Baylor hosting Tarleton State this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Baylor coming in as 26.5-point favorites-ish. It feels like to me that if Baylor loses this game, we might be in a little bit of trouble. But we did see Tarleton win their first game on their ESPN debut this week. Corey Hogue, our small college insider, was there at that game.
Yeah, for Baylor, I mean, again, yes, this is a ranked Tarleton team, I should mention, for a lot of casuals out there. So this isn't necessarily a walk in the park from a traditional standpoint. Yes, Baylor should win this game. It should be comfortable. Offense, just want to see rhythm. You just want to see Daquan Finn being explosive. You want to see a run game, right? Jake Spavital does know how to call a run game despite his air raid ties. And, of course, the defense. You want to see what that defense, and if they're able to just kind of squash any semblance of pulse that Tarleton offense has. So Dave Aranda's back at the helm. Hopefully they can get it done very controllingly with no worries.
SMU back at home this weekend against Houston Christian Saturday at 7 p.m. You can watch it on ACC Extra or ESPN+. Carter, SMU heavily favored in this game. Anything to take away from the Mustangs? What are we looking to see this week after week 0?
To exercise some demons. Put 50-plus up next opponent.
Correct. Texas Tech hosting Abilene Christian this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Texas Tech heading into this game as 33.5-point favorites. Craven, what are you hoping to see from the Red Raiders, this weekend? And Barrett Morton at the helm there for quarterback.
Yeah, Barrett Morton's shoulder, just how much they give to him if he's passing the rock around will be important. Kind of what that defense looks like. They're replacing about half the starters. A lot of faces that they recruited that they kind of stash away and now feel are ready to play on the defensive side of the ball, so that'll be interesting. But for me, the number one thing is kind of what that offensive line looks like, especially at right tackle. It looks like Caleb Rogers has slid back out. He was listed as as a starter at right tackle. I know they experimented him at guard and at center, and as we talked about all offseason, if he has to play tackle, that's kind of been an issue, on the outside in pass pro. They were hoping Ty Buchanan would kind of step up. Not sure if that's happened, and so just kind of see what that offensive line rotation looks like going into what will be a big week 2 for them.
Ish, I'm giving you this one. Texas State hosting Lamar this Saturday at 7 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Ish, what do you want to see from your Bobcats this weekend? Should be an easy win for the Bobcats.
Yeah, I'm curious about the defense under first-year play caller Dexter McCoyle, but also I think low-key, what do we see from this Texas State team on both sides of the ball? UTSA is next weekend. Do you show everything you got or even half of the things you got against Lamar? Obviously, you want to get McCoyle comfortable with play calling, so that'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, you want to get Jordan McLeod some good in-game reps to gel with the rest of the offense, but how much do they actually put on film heading into next week, knowing it's one of the probably top 5 biggest games of the past decade or so for Texas State against UTSA?
UTEP playing at Nebraska this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on Fox. Nebraska heading into this game as 27.5-point favorites. The over/under 48.5. Carter, this is a completely new UTEP team under the helm there with Scotty Walden. What do you want to see from UTEP heading into this game as heavy underdogs?
UTEP stay healthy, and also Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola looks exactly like Patrick Mahomes, so don't be too freaked out when you see it.
Craven, round us out here. UTSA taking on Kennesaw State this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. UTSA heading into this game as 25-point favorites, obviously. Over under 49.5. What's up, Craven? What do you want to see from your Roadrunners?
Quarterback's going to be interesting. Who takes the first snap? Jeff Traylor's kind of kept that under wraps. Owen McCown or Eddie Lee Marburger both listed as starter on the depth chart, so we'll see what the quarterback position looks like. But I think big time for UTSA this year is going to be the trenches. If they're going to compete for a conference championship, maybe even a college football playoff spot as the G5 champion, it will be because their offensive line and defensive line are dominant. If they can't be that against Kennesaw State, that probably spells trouble throughout the season. So just to see how good they are in the trenches.
One more time for the viewers here is the Week 1 slate of the 2024 college football season. Pretty good slate here, I'd say. Obviously, the headliner, Texas A&M Notre Dame. Really, really excited that college football's back, guys.
Oh, it's back. We went through the whole schedule, and I'm ready to just get this started. TCU, though, what's up with that Friday game? Come on now. We got to stop with that.
Past my
No
bedtime.
kidding.
I know, exactly. Exactly. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll be back Saturday night/Sunday morning. Whenever you listen to us, we will be back with our recap episodes. That is audio only, just to clarify. We will be back. Oh, there was some feedback in my ear. But anyway, we'll be back with our recap episodes like we usually do after every week. So again, Saturday night, Sunday morning. Hopefully by the time you wake up Sunday morning, it'll be out there. Buy Craven's book. Dave Campbell's, I want to make sure I get this title right. Dave Campbell's Guide to Texas College Football by Mike Craven, TexasFootball.com. Mike Elko, please give us a call, and go Rutgers, beat Howard.